I didn't know I was on speakerphone, but I was like, so let me get this right. She's worried about someone opening the window and falling. I was like, whether there's a small screen, the screen that I have, or a full screen, it's not gonna stop a kid from falling through a window. And I was like, honestly, this sounds like a parenting thing and not a screen issue. And I didn't know I was on speakerphone, but he was like, well, she just wants a screen. I was like, all right, I'll work on it. Welcome back to another installment of This Week in Real Estate, where I recap my week as a self-managing landlord of 20 plus units and a fix and flip investor. Diving right into the week, we had a rent adjustment from one of our Section 8 tenants. So with Section 8, the portion that the housing authority or government pays is based on the income of the tenant. And this tenant, I don't know, had an income change of some sort. So she went from being responsible for $312 of her rent down to $8 of her rent. And these types of Section 8 tenants are my absolute favorite because all your money is pretty much guaranteed. I'm pretty sure she's not going to be late on $8 a month. And if she is, it's really not going to make that big of a difference. So I got notified of that change, which I am happy with. So that works out well. The two move-ins that I had last week, I mentioned that you can kind of tell what type of tenant you're gonna have just by the conversations you have with them before they move in. And this week, both of my new move-ins met expectations. So one of them is a property manager for a large apartment complex, and she moved in, found 3 things that were wrong she felt out wrong that needed to be addressed. I agreed with them. And then she did her move-in report and sent me 100 plus pictures. Well, she didn't actually send them to me. She shared 100 plus pictures with me on Google Drive, but she wanted to document everything. And kind of what I expected from her. She's a property manager in the field, so she knows. So she lived up to expectations. And on the flip side, my other move-in was a Section 8 tenant, and she lived up to her expectations. So I think it was the second or third day she moved in, she reached out because the heat wasn't working, which is weird because it was working before. So I had my HVAC guy go out and he's like, yeah, I basically turned the system off and turned it back on and it started working. And he did the measurements and read, and he was like, yeah, the air is coming out of the vents at 81 degrees. So I was like, okay, cool. And the following day or 2 days later, she reaches out do you know my heat's still not fixed? And I was like, no. The HVAC guy told me he fixed it and it was blowing 81 degrees. So she starts to give me this spiel, and I just look, I'll have the HVAC guy go back out, but I don't want to hear your spiel. I didn't tell her that, but I pretty much cut her off I'll work on it. You giving me the spiel is not going to help. So the HVAC guy, I tell him he needs to go back out, and he reaches out kind of to coordinate, and she basically tells him to come the next day. The next day, I get a call from the Section 8 inspector, and I'm like, hey, what's up? He's like, yeah, we got an emergency inspection request. I'm like, what? He was like, the lady says there's no heat. And I was like, well, my guy went out the other day and he was basically at the property. He was like, yeah, and these screens, so context, on this property, I don't have full window screens. There are window screens that are adjustable. You can kind of just put in and out of a window. And that's what I used on this property. And he was like, yeah, these screens, they're good to pass the inspection, but she doesn't like them. She has small kids and she's worried about them opening the window in the middle of the night and falling out. And I didn't know I was on speakerphone, but I was like, so let me get this right. she's worried about someone opening the window and falling. I was like, whether there's a small screen, the screen that I have, or a full screen, it's not gonna stop a kid from falling through a window. And I was like, honestly, this sounds like a parenting thing and not a screen issue. And I didn't know I was on speakerphone, but he was like, well, she just wants a screen. I was like, all right, I'll work on it. And then he mentioned, like, yeah, and she doesn't have a shower rod. And I was like, yeah, I don't provide shower rods. Like, shower rods aren't a requirement. She can get a shower rod to put in. So within a week of her moving in and me actually addressing her concerns, she called Section 8 on me to have them come do an emergency inspection, and nothing came from it because I was already addressing the issue. The screens I have are good for passing an inspection, and a shower rod is not required for you to move in and be comfortable in a property. I don't know what's up with shower rods, because my other tenant that moved in hit me up and was like, yeah, and can we have someone see about the shower bar? And I was like, if I remember correctly, there's not like mounts for like a mounted shower bar there. She was like, no, there's not. And I was like, yeah, so just buy an adjustable bar to put in. She's like, okay. And I've managed currently over 20 units, and I've had other units that I've sold, and this is like the first 2 times I've ever had someone ask me about a shower like rod. It's really weird. But that's that. I had a whole fiasco with flood insurance. So the refi that we've been working on, this refi has been taking way too long, but they had put flood insurance on my term sheet. And I was like, property's not in the flood zone. And then we like took a deeper look, and they got a certificate, and I called the guy that like provided the flood certificate, and I was like, hey, when I look at this map, I'm in zone X. So zone X is in what most properties are in, which does not require flood insurance. They're saying this property is in zone AE, which does require flood insurance. So I called him, he was like, nah, like if you switch to this view and zoom all the way in, you can see probably like the first 3 feet of the building, because the building runs like this. So the first 3 feet closest to the street are in the AE zone, the rest of the building is in X. So because just that one piece of the building is in AE, I'm required to get flood insurance. So I'm gonna close with flood insurance, and then I'm going to have an elevation report done on the property and see if I can get rid of the requirement to have flood insurance. So with flood insurance in the zone AE, it basically says to like this elevation, and this one is 8 feet. So anything above 8 feet is not really gonna flood. So if this zone does flood, it's gonna flood up to 7 feet and 11 inches. So if your building sits at 8 feet and above water level, then you're fine. And I think I will be fine, because there is a thing called letter of map adjustment that you can get basically once you do your elevation report and it says that you're above 8 feet, you can send this adjustment in to FEMA and have them adjust the flood map. And the neighbors to the left of me, the neighbors across the street, we were able to find their LOMA documents saying that they're in zone X. Unfortunately, I can't just piggyback on their LOMA. I have to get my own LOMA, but I just have to have a surveyor come out, measure basically the height of the building to say that I am above 8 feet, or 8 feet or above. So I reached out to a surveyor to begin that process to relieve that requirement for flood insurance. With the flips, nothing exciting is happening. We are just continuing work there. The duplex is probably in the final stretch this week. We are doing our cabinets, and they will probably come in next week, the following week. So the week of, 16th? Is that right? Yeah. And so we'll be wrapping up then, but that's the only thing we'll be waiting for after this upcoming week. Pine, we are full steam ahead. We should be wrapping that one up the week of the 16th as well, just like knickknacks and hitting the market like that weekend before Christmas. And Flip 1 is probably like a week after Christmas. We are out of permitting hell at Pine and 17th, or excuse me, Flip 1. So we plan to just roll the next couple weeks and knock these things out. There is a little bit of like fear around, not fear, but like, I don't know what the word is, concern around going on the market around Christmas. But I gain nothing by sitting with completed property. So we're gonna go to the market, and my realtor and I have what we call like holiday magic. So a lot of times when there's a holiday weekend, when we have an active listing, we usually get an offer. So it may be a good thing to go on the market right before Christmas, and maybe we get some Christmas magic. If not, so maybe some New Year magic. So that's it. As always, if you have any questions, comments, not concerns, but questions or comments, shoot me a DM, leave a comment. I'm happy to talk about anything else. And until next week, that was This Week in Real Estate.